Who are some women that often get overlooked in history but had major contributions to society? Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to never miss an upload. Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha. She is the Dean of Medicine at Early Children's Hospital in Flint, Michigan. She saw that children were having elevated lead levels, ELLs, outside the normal range. She contacted the Genesee Department of Health, who at first dismissed her claim, then sent her obfuscated data to make it look like the ELLs were completely within normal trends. She grew frustrated at this, so she called a team of epidemiologists from UVA, her alma mater, to find the source of the lead. Lo and behold, she found that the water in multiple zip codes was contaminated with lead. She informed the Genesee Department of Health again, who brushed her off. She then said fuck it, and held a major press conference where she announced on air that the water in Flint wasn't safe and to come to the hospital to get your child tested and to pick up supplies of water and liquid infant formula. If she saved thousands of children from the permanent effects of lead poisoning. Edit 1, thanks for the awards. Edit 2, it was VT, not UVA. Apologies to all the VT alumni who DM'd me about it. I was just reading about her yesterday. She's also helped design ways to assist parents who have children with lead poisoning as well. Virginia Hall has a building named after her at the CIA. She was an American woman from Baltimore who went to Europe in the 1930s, lost her leg in a shooting accident, then proceeded to become a leader in the French Resistance and master of disguise, all with a wooden leg. The book A Woman of No Importance is about her and came out last year. That was a great book. What a woman. I was going to add her. The most remarkable spy you never knew existed. She features prominently in a recent Netflix film, I'm spacing out on the title, possibly has Churchill's name in it. She really deserves her own film or films. What a life. Dr. Georgiana Seeger-Jones. Dr. Jones single-handedly organized the field of gynecological endocrinology. While at Johns Hopkins with her husband, Dr. Howard Jones and Drs. Roberts and Steptoe, she devised the hypothesis of follicular hyperstimulation, which produced more than one egg per cycle. Her later discoveries led to increases in viability of in vitro fertilization. Per Wikipedia, as a resident at Johns Hopkins, she discovered that the pregnancy hormone HCG was manufactured by the placenta, not the pituitary gland as originally thought. This discovery led to the development of many of the early over-the-counter pregnancy test kits currently available. In 1949, Jones made the first description of luteal phase dysfunction and is credited to be the first in using progesterone to treat women with a history of miscarriages, thus allowing many of them to not only conceive, but to deliver healthy babies. She also served as a Dean of the College of Pontifical Sciences, advising the Vatican of matters of gynecology and conception. Her husband always said she's the smarter one. She was also a great friend. Huh. So she's the one to thank that I even exist. Sandra Ford, the drug technician who first brought attention to what would become the AIDS epidemic. She knew something was up when she began receiving unusually high numbers of requests for pentamidine, an antibiotic reserved for treating pneumocystis pneumonia in seriously ill, immunocompromised patients. The patients it was being requested for were gay men who had been otherwise healthy. And also back then it was called GRID, not AIDS. It stood for gay-related immunodeficiency, whereas AIDS stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. The more you know. And it was so fucking awful how the whole thing was handled. Seriously depressing. But, for a laugh, we can remember the giant condom placed over Jesse Helms' house, because F that asshole and every other jerk who thought HIV/AIDS wasn't worth researching because it was punishment for being gay. T really is. I didn't really understand the gravity of the situation and the massive failures to act due to stigma until I watched the film and the band played on. I highly recommend you watch it if you have any curiosity about the subject. The Allied codebreakers at places like Bletchley Park during World War II. They worked incredibly long, tedious, and stressful hours and were a major contributor to the war effort and military intelligence, but their work didn't even receive official recognition from the British government until 2009, 64 years after the war ended. Hey, that was my granny. She loved giving talks about it. Can you pass on a story from her? That must have been interesting work/time. Not the person you were talking to, but I have a story you might enjoy. A few years ago I visited Bletchley. They have a replica of one of Turing's bombs built in current time, and they have a guy who gives a presentation and show how the bomb works and how it was operated. This guy told us that once they were visited by a family whose grandma was one of the young women who operated the bombs in World War II. She sat in her wheelchair in front row paying enormous attention at the demonstration. The guy said that he expected that she would jump at any minute and call him on something he was doing wrong. In the end of the presentation she smiled and said, "Well done, young man. That is exactly how we did it." And the guy felt that he could finally breathe smile. Bessie Coleman. She was a black woman who wanted to learn to fly. No one would teach her. She learned that the French would, however, so she moved to France, learned French and how to fly. Then she came back to the States and taught whoever wanted to learn. She was alive same time as Amelia Earhart and got no recognition at the time. I was going to put her in glad someone did. She was a huge part of African Americans getting into flight. She played not only a role for females but for African Americans during the early days of aviation, to be able to fly and get into the aviation field. The main road that runs through the middle of O'Hare Airport is called Bessie Coleman Drive. Mary Todd Lincoln. I know she went absolutely mad, which wasn't all her fault, but she was the one who really pushed her husband, Abraham Lincoln, for those not from America, to keep moving up the political ladder, and ultimately shaped what the First Lady of the US is. Not sure he would have become president without her influence. She had a lot more ambition than he did. Edit, fun fact: she also liked to bake. Look up her recipes, guys. Her almond cake sounded delicious and it was supposedly one of her husband's favorite desserts. I think Mary Todd Lincoln is such a misunderstood woman. She loved her husband so much and had so much support for him. Granted, her ambition was always to end up in the White House. She had some pretty manic behaviors, and those combined with the trauma of losing her sons and husband had a lot to do with her erratic behavior later. Abraham Lincoln ran down the street yelling, "Mary, we won," after hearing the election results.